Welcome one, welcome all. This is Blacklisted Radio. It's the 22nd day of February 2014. My name is Doug Owen. I'm the senior editor of BlacklistedNews.com. And this is our podcast, our Saturday morning extravaganza. We talk about the news that maybe others don't have the ability to discuss in their day-to-day lives or to get the straight, skinny from the mainstream media. We can recap. That's what we do here. You can follow along. You can be part of the show at blacklistedradio.com. All right, so it's been quite a while. I didn't do the Doomcast this week because it's been kind of crazy around here. The Doomcast studio is going to be tested to its might today. One of the reasons that we expanded and moved from our old location was because of two reasons. One, because I needed more room, and two, because we have a new addition to the family. So I'm pretty excited. This Tuesday, my first child, was born. So he's in the other room. We're going to see how this thing goes. It's pretty exciting. But I haven't had a lot of sleep. I've been doing a lot as far as trying to keep up with the media. But if you've been wondering why so slow this week, what happened to Doug? That's why. So congratulations to my wife, first and foremost, who has just done a spectacular job and was a trooper. And maybe for some of you out there that have become kind of cynical and look at the world in a very jaded way, I think that if nothing else, we have to kind of put the fact that the government sucks and is so intrusive into our day-to-day lives and is not representing the people in this country, or respectively, more than likely, wherever you listen in the world, your government is probably not doing the best job, and you would be hard-pressed to find one throughout history that did a great job with the issuance of money, with human rights and civil rights across the board. So don't let that slow you down from doing what I think is the most important thing in this world, and that is to raise bright children, doing our best to do that, and hopefully they may lead people in the future to better decisions and better government. I mean, so many people, just feel this immense amount of over intrusion into our day-to-day lives, and it kind of ruins the rest of it. So there is beauty in this world. There is a lot of things that are much bigger than politics and all the topics that we're going to get into here during this broadcast. But so anyway, if I sound tired, if I sound a little out of it, and I had oral surgery once again on my mouth yesterday. So if I sound drunk, it's Saturday morning. It's not drunkenness. It is literally lack of sleep and lack of ability to move my tongue that well. Most of this stuff speaks for itself, so I only have to really look at the headlines to get where we need to be today. We're going to talk about media, and we're going to talk about Ukraine. Let's start with Ukraine. It's not surprising that this thing has heated up, and what we saw just a few years back during the 2008 Summer Olympics was was it 2008? My goodness. George W. Bush, I reference this often, smacking beach volleyball players on the butt. Meanwhile, Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, and the shadow government inside the Pentagon running an operation and a proxy war with Russia in Georgia. Some of you may remember this. So while everybody was watching the Olympics, totally out to lunch, the media focus was just so laser-guidedly on a topic of the Winter Olympics and or the Summer Olympics that year, and pretty much nothing else. I mean, Georgia was happening in the background, and there has been a lot of coverage. We have hundreds dead. I mean, the sheer violence on the ground, the sheer violence is appalling on both sides. I saw this APC carrier video, and you'd be hard pressed to think that you're going to find any kind of democratic solution out of the chaos on the ground. Molotov cocktails, burning police, and the APC carriers. I mean, this is, if you want pictures to build a scary website with a lot of martial law type imagery, look no farther than what's happening in Kiev. Now, we have some interesting developments that may shed a little light on what's actually happening on the ground. We have this coming out of USA Today. I talk about the lackluster ownership, the compromised ownership of USA Today often. 100 killed in new Ukraine clashes. Protesters threw rocks and fire bombs at lines of police on Thursday after government snipers shot into crowds of protesters. We don't know who that actually was, of course. We assume that it was the government, but it could be anyone. But these protesters, whoever they may be representing, are armed, and plenty of pictures of people with revolvers. There's a lot of interested parties, and there's a lot of independent people and the other disgruntled and disenfranchised youth that have definitely joined in. And that's pretty much what you're going to have in any kind of protest. You go to a protest about the World Trade Organization, you're going to find anarchists, you're going to find Democrats, you're going to find libertarians, you're going to find a lot of people that want to voice their opinions and propagate their political platform in any kind of event where there's media attention, and there are those that are irritated at the state and want the state to bend to their will, and that's what the protesters want. They don't want any kind of constitutional or governmental process, and I don't blame them for that. I mean, when you look at asking government, the people that are currently in government, to regulate and check themselves and to do a good job and an honest job with deciding whether they should keep their own jobs. I mean, come on. In that, you don't have to go to the Ukraine to find cronyism and self-interested egomaniacs at the helm in government. So that's pretty much universal anywhere. So I mean, the violence on the streets of Kiev is just out of control. But with this chaos on the ground, it calls for drastic solutions, both by government and by those in government. Now, what we have, I think, is ultimately somewhat of a coup d'etat. Got people inside of government. If you haven't heard, Friday, the opposition leader who was imprisoned, and this is the kind of tit for tat that's been happening, and the political oppression in Ukraine that has also helped make this such a heated debate. I mean, you have somebody like this. I'm going to try to say her name, Tymoshenko. Her name's Yulia, and the Ukrainian parliament voted Friday to change the country's criminal code in a way that would allow her release from prison. Pretty convenient, but it just kind of shows you the rule by decree and the changing of laws and who they benefit on the whim. Now, not to defend her, but I think that she's a media darling already. She looks like Princess Leia, and I have to stress that this is a media event. This is a PR campaign. And when it comes to Mrs. Tymoshenko, who knows? She may be one of the choice CIA to lead, and why she has been imprisoned. It's really hard to know. I mean, of course, she says that she was blackmailed, framed. The government changed the laws willy-nilly. And that happens in places like the Ukraine. Ukraine's parliament voted Friday to change the country's criminal code. So that's convenient. But it also shows us that there are people inside of the government, the Ukrainian government, that are working potentially for outside forces. Lee Rogers, good friend of mine, makes a pretty compelling case for the CIA and Mossad and their interests and how they are on the ground handling and being huge role leaders in much of the unrest. And that's what they do. I mean, that is what the CIA's done. And it's not, some kind of conjecture on my part. I mean, you have Victoria Nuland, you have John McCain, you have George Clooney, the media behind this event. You have all of the superstars that world organizations go to. And shockingly enough, or maybe not shocking, even after the Victoria Nuland row, where the Russians allegedly, or whoever, released this audio of them talking about how they were, quote-unquote, midwiving the situation in the Ukraine and hoping that the different players that are U.S.-friendly would land jelly side up, getting your deets. I love all the vernacular they use. It's just so silly. But it shows you that these people, number one, mean business. Number two, they have their tentacles in every aspect of it. So are there good guys and bad guys in this, in this mix? I think, it depends on who benefits from this. But anyway, I just wanted to, point this out. She's going to be a media darling, and she's easy on the eyes, and they're going to really use her. I think she's like the Hillary of the Ukraine, and her wrongful imprisonment has, and this is what happens when governments get out of control. So all of you other folks working for whatever agency it may be under the state banner, just remember these kind of situations and play out in the oddest of ways. And I think it's also a big highlight as to how most of this is a media show. It's about selling it. It's about making it look good. It's about cementing it with global governance and more of the same, making it look legitimate, giving it that facade. Okay, we had an election, we had a vote. That's one of the things that's happening. They have called for an election in May. The current president, nobody knows where he's at. That's the latest on him. He's missing. They had a vote. 328 in the parliament voted to impeach the president. So the sanctions are on their way. You have sanctions and of course, the economic hitmen that are hitting them from the backside. This came out just on the 19th. Ukraine region declares independence, sending dollar bonds to record low. Russian ruble tumbles to 5-year low. So this is the economic warfare aspect of what's happening in the Ukraine. And with different groups and regions, the U.S. and other groups like the International Crisis Group, of course, you have to have the economic backing. You have to have the corporate sponsorship and the boots on the ground that have been working these deals. But just the claim that there is this P2OG plan. Google that if you don't know what P2OG is. But plan to balkanize and to decentralize this region into different autonomous regions isn't unheard of. And that might actually be the game plan that going forward. Because, the Ukrainian region and regions throughout that bloc have often, over the last 30 years, claimed self-autonomy and have broken away from central control. So these are other tools in the handbag for those that are creating, suitcase governments to kind of use. Something in the background happening. This came out of Zero Hedge. The events in Ukraine continue to deteriorate. Moments ago, lawmakers in Ukraine, the Lviv region, declared independence after backers evicted appointed government overnight. So they had a government in the bag, ready to go. Nobody's voted. Okay, they're ready to ouster the president. They're going to have some kind of election in May. And you know the State Department and the UN and Ban Ki-moon, as soon as the Sochi Olympics are over, are going to be on top of that, jumping into this next media phase. So don't worry. This is all going to be huge talking points, I think, in just a few more days, once they get rid of Matt Lauer and the Olympics. It hasn't been a surprise. And for those out there that listen to this show, predictive programming, and not just putting it into the media, but the ability to predict revolutions and to create revolutions with math and numbers is already here. I wanted to mention this from Motherboard because I think it's very timely. The math that predicted the revolution sweeping the globe right now. Now, how do you come to the math? And, of course, if you're looking at what it is that makes a revolution, some people look at the economics. That's usually the best way. At a certain taxing rate that the U.S. citizens have pretty much exceeded without revolution. But the old standard was, you take more than 25%, 35, 45% of somebody's income, at some point you're going to have a revolution. When people are working for nothing, you're going to have a revolution. I think that's a real testament to the high priests of society in this country that have kept things going, considering that they are extracting more wealth from individuals, more time, more of your life than ever. And you can I would say that the high standard of life for most people in the Western world, comparatively, and some people say, well, do you want to be on welfare and forced into Obamacare and living paycheck to paycheck or welfare check to welfare check? It's better than living in Zimbabwe and you have an iPhone to play Farmville on or whatever it may be. So, I mean, it's not that bad. Our poor, okay, the people that beg on the streets here, have, technology that, people in the third world and steady income. I would somebody begging on the corner street in Austin, Texas, is doing better than the average global citizen. Nonetheless, none of this is surprising, but these are many of the factors, mostly economic, socioeconomic, that go into this. From Motherboard, it's happening in the Ukraine, Venezuela. Yeah, we should talk about that for a moment, too. Thailand, okay, the Summer of Rage, it's already starting. Bosnia, don't forget Syria, many more. Revolutions, unrest, and riots are sweeping the globe. As predicted, a near simultaneous eruption of violent protests can be seen, but it can seem random and chaotic, inevitably symptoms of the unstable world we live in. But there's at least one common thread between the desperate nations, cultures, and people in conflict, one element that has demonstrably proven itself to make these uprisings more likely: high global food prices. It's all about the money and food. Just over a year ago, complex system theorists at the New England Complex Systems Institute warned us that if food prices continue to climb, so too would the likelihood that there would be riots across the globe. Sure enough, we're seeing them now. The paper's author, Yanir Bar-Yam, charted the rise in the FAO World Price Index and a measure that the UN uses to map the cost of food, and found that whenever it rose above 210, riots broke out worldwide. It happened in 2008 after the economic collapse, and again in 2011 when a Tunisian street vendor who could no longer feed his family set himself on fire in protest. Self-immolation. Bar-Yam built a model with the data, which then predicted that something like the Arab Spring would ensue just weeks before it did, 4 days before Mohammed Bouazizi's self-immolation helped ignite the revolution that would spread across the region. The NECSI submitted a government report that highlighted the risk that rising food prices posed to global stability. Now the model has once again proven itself prescient. Okay, so the math here, and you can check out the article, just Google predicted revolution sweeping the globe right now. It's no secret that people will, I think for the most part, play along, even under dictators, tyrants, and bad leadership, as long as you have a relatively decent amount of food. Not enough food, go to Greece, look at what's happening in the streets. You have people that are, hurting each other. I don't think they're killing each other, but you have people that are pushing one another. You have a lot of violence. You have the rise of far right-wing nationalism. You have the rise of all of these really bad economic results because of the price of food and other bad decisions. The reason that you can't afford food, the reason that the government hasn't been bringing in the food, all those things are because of money, not because we don't have enough food on this planet. We've got plenty of food on this planet. We could double the size of the population. Bill Gates wouldn't be happy about that. Malthus wouldn't be happy about that, but we could, and we could easily sustain. And if we used better farming techniques or put 1/10 of the money that is lost at the Pentagon into doing these type of things and actually, and not to say that there aren't those that are doing it, but government hasn't done a very good job of looking at price stability or taking care of the people in this country, for that matter, very well. I mean, they've done a pretty piss-poor job, and if you look at how much food we subsidize, most of the food subsidies with the new farm bill are going towards sugar. So that's great. Give everyone cancer and give them bad teeth. That's what we need. Subsidize sugar. Not that it can't be used for many other things, like beer. So there's great. It's great, but government incentives to subsidize foodstuffs that are used for energy rather than feeding people. If you're trying to prevent global revolution, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So one of the things that I did want to note, and I was going to talk about later, but it's worthwhile because when you go down this road, we all know where it ultimately leads, and that is it's global warming, the reason that we don't have food. It's global warming, the reason we're going to have more terrorism. So ultimately, that's the cul-de-sac that you're going to find yourself in. I wanted to point this out because it shows you that science does work. There really is science. There is science that is provable, and there is climatology that is legitimate, that has been happening for centuries on this planet, and it just doesn't make as much money, and there's just not nearly enough crises to justify new derivative schemes into climate bonds and all of the things that we talked about a few podcasts ago. Farmer's Almanac nails winter freeze. Government climate scientists way off. Now, I'll tell you why. Because the Farmer's Almanac, its only agenda is to tell you what the weather's going to be like, because farmers rely on it to know what to plant, when to plant. Farmers, my father-in-law, who went to Texas A&M, who is a farmer. He doesn't do it professionally, but he has, and he is still doing it at a pretty high capacity for self-sustenance, and because he enjoys it mostly, I think, because he gives most of the food away. But so he doesn't need it, but he likes to do it. And he's somebody who has in the side of his truck bench in his pickup, a Farmer's Almanac. and you plant with the moon. I mean, there's things that we've known for a long, long time. Sometimes people get so smart that they think that all of the intelligence of yesteryear is gone. But this kind of proves it. From BizPack review, the bitterly cold winter the country is experiencing now took government clientologists completely by surprise. The reason? They have an agenda. Farmer's Almanac, why my father-in-law has it? Because they care about telling you the truth, not scaring you. It's kind of funny. Anyway, but it was predicted with dead center accuracy by the old Farmer's Almanac, a 200-year-plus publication. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Climate Prediction Center feverishly worked out numbers, plugging all available data into super quantum computers to predict temperatures that would be above normal for November through January across much of the 48 lower states, according to Bloomberg Business Week. I don't know, does that make you feel better knowing that the Matrix fails, that the Matrix may be just a little bit too smart for its own good? And by that I mean that you put so many of these pieces of information into a supercomputer, because that's all they do. They take your information, good information in, great information out, compiled data. But that with all of this, all of the technology that we have at our hands today, and all of the, I don't know, probably if you look at the research and development aspect, the trillions of dollars, a trillion maybe, hundreds of billions of dollars that goes into climate science, it does two things. Number one, it proves that the matrix does fall apart, and that the computers aren't always smarter than a good old boy that's been looking at the moon and cycles and weather cycles. But if you have an agenda and you start plugging all of these other pieces of scary information into your machine here, it's going to predict, of course, that it's going to be high over and over again. And it doesn't matter, because I think that the whole point is missed. My point is that we do have some really bad problems with pollution, with the way that we create energy. It is unsustainable. I hate to use that word. One of the big articles, one of the things that is really exciting to me is they now have the first thorium reactor developed, designed, and ready to go. And looking at the comments, it trended for 4 days at the top of blacklistednews.com. So I know that people do care about this because it is an alternative. So many of us are really, really hesitant to trust human beings with energy creation. Not that nuclear is bad, but you just can't trust the people that run these energy corporations, because they just don't care about maintenance. That's the first thing that you do away with when you need more corporate backers, more profit. The first thing you do is you know what, this thing needs to be pushed. Well, we should make this safety. Let's get rid of all the safety. Let's get rid of all of the overhead. So you just can't. It's not that nuclear energy, in my opinion, is bad. It's just that we're not responsible enough to do the right thing. People don't have the moral ethics to do the right thing when it comes to dollars and cents, because people are self-interested. So anyway, if you're interested in the weather, go with the Farmer's Almanac. If you're interested in scaring people with stupid predictions that are proven over and over and over again to be wrong, do that. But it kills me. It really does, to know that so much money, effort. Now you have the science, the degrees that are created, just like the Department of Homeland Security has created colleges and degree programs. Now you have all of these climatologists that are peer reviewing all of these papers. It's so funny to me because I see this all the time. 98% of all peer-reviewed information about global warming is in consensus. Well, then why are they so freaked out about people like me that dare criticize what they're doing? It's just like every other cult that I've seen, whether it's the alternative media anti-New World Order cult. Don't dare bash the messenger because we care about it. You have to accept You have to accept half-truths and bad leadership for the greater good. I've heard that my whole life. It's for the greater good. And when it comes to climate change, we spend so much money, time, and effort into things that make no sense, that are just a complete waste. It's just turning dollar bills and doing nothing. It's frustrating because there are great ways that we could extract energy from the world. It's readily available. It's free, and it should be. But you can't have the plebs doing whatever they want with free energy. My God, people would just do whatever it is that floated their boat. They'd start creating and innovating, and they would create a power shift, and they would create political vacuums, and that would be bad. That would be very bad. So the Farmer's Almanac, just like most things, like the FAO food price, are directly proportionally relative to what's happening. George Soros, who is one of the big funders out there we're going to talk about today, has made a bet. $1.3 billion. Have you ever made a $1.3 billion bet? It must be pretty looming to kind of, think about those kind of things. What am I going to bet $1 billion on today? Things that I don't have to worry about. But whenever George Soros bets money, it's big news because it's a lot of money. It's more than you have. It's more than I have. And it moves markets. George Soros, the billionaire hedge fund manager who has broken the British pound in some Republicans' hearts, is betting that the U.S. stock market could break too. Soros Fund Management had a $1.3 billion wager at the end of 2013 that the Standard & Poor's 500 stock index would fall, the Bullion Baron blog reported last week. Now, I would call this insider trading at its finest. I wonder if anybody will go after George Soros, but probably not, because he is the media. He is the media in the left. He is the counter, if you will, to the Koch brothers and those that are creating the fairness doctrine, the FCC media takeover, as some have claimed it to be. We're going to talk about that, but it's a big bet. It's a bet on chaos, and it's a bet on the dollar to fail. It's a bet on not just the dollar, but the stock market itself to go down. When you have global unrest, when you have companies being nationalized left and right, and I think that's going to be an ongoing trend pointing back to Venezuela and Maduro, regardless of what you think of Maduro, the bus driver president that has thrown some of the probably, I would say, assets of the CIA, some of the media people that are taking pictures of these protests. Number one, protests are a sign that you have a healthy democracy, Maduro. My advice to you is to not throw all of the media out because it makes you seem like you are trying to control the message. It's not a good idea. And, firebombs and Molotov cocktails, it happens in the best of republics. It's not that big of a deal. If you look at what's happening in the Ukraine, it's not nearly as severe. But the point is that when you have people like Maduro that are taking U.S.-sponsored, funded companies away from them, nationalizing businesses, that's a scary trend, especially if you're somebody like George Soros, who's investing in infrastructure, who's investing in things other than the stock market. Betting against the stock market might be an indicator that he's saying that Janet Yellen and the Federal Reserve will taper, and that will be the only thing that will bring the stock market, in my opinion, other than global unrest, which is a pretty good chance as well, bringing that down. So it's a big bet. It's something to look at. All right, so let's talk about the media real quickly. Before we get on to the mainstream media, I want to talk about the new alternative media for a moment. It's worth a first look. And if you've been keeping up, Glenn Greenwald has cashed in with the owner of PayPal Omidar and Poitras and some of these other assets to create the new media. Because we all know that the old media is losing credibility, and there has to be, there is a new cult leader, and it's the Edward Snowden cult. It's one of many, and the Glenn Greenwalds, and even libertarians can get on board if they can get past maybe his personal lifestyle choices. But don't worry, okay? The franchise is expanding. Matt Taibbi has now quit Rolling Stone to join Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill, who I think is actually legitimate, and I think that he's probably a good guy, but he's just like most. He wants some of that George Soros Democracy Now! Money. He's, and you have to kind of toe the line. And so he has done that. He has proven himself. So has Matt Taibbi. He has become the archetype of the honest journalist. He gets that cred across the board, and people like what he said. And his investigative journalism is pretty darn compelling. I mean, I don't disagree with his pieces. If you look at into his father, I mean, he's a product of the journalism lineage or anatomy, and he is now joining Glenn Greenwald with others. So I think it's interesting because they're kind of putting all this together. Economic Policy Journal had this piece, and I think it's true, and I agree with it. That's why I cross-posted. I am not impressed with the hire. Taibbi spins out a leftist slant of his news coverage of crony Wall Street, and of course, it's always the solutions that lie therein. Matt Taibbi being somebody who wants more and more government, somebody like Wenzel here, or Mises, or others from the Lew Rockwell libertarian camp would probably see these solutions. You need less regulation and more free market capitalism versus more government regulation, because when you have government, it gives the government too much power, and that engenders cronyism. That's the debate. I have my own isms that I am I believe in, and I think that pragmatism and looking at things rationally are great if you're talking about rational people. But when you have irrational people, when you have the ability for people to be misled, those kind of things, the whole idea of people controlling every aspect of their own destiny, I love, but you have to accept the fact that is going to lead a lot of people possibly to their own slaughter, because people, that great Men in Black quote, individuals can handle the truth. People, people would freak out. I paraphrase. Anyway, so it's going to be interesting to see what's happening here at first look, and where they go with their politics. But they've already said that it's going to have a left feel. So there you go. It's not really alternative media. It's going to definitely be corporate sponsored. And that's why I encourage you, even though I do podcasts half asleep sometimes, and I put countless hours of work into bringing the analysis, without commercials, without any kind of agenda. You can support this show. You can support others that do this, that will bring you real, honest opinions. Because to so many people, it's not that they're necessarily shills. It's that they want access to others in the media, and they want to ride their coattails. One of the biggest and easiest ways to become notable is to discuss things with notable people, and hopefully some of their fandom will check you out. And so much of the whole problem with media is that you want access. Jeremy Scahill might be a great guy, but he wants access to Amy Goodman and those George Soros millions at Democracy Now! Not to disparage Amy Goodman. I'd rather listen to Amy Goodman than Rush Limbaugh any day of the week. I think that they're going to have more news coverage of events that I find to be important. Now, I don't agree with most of their slants, but that's just my political leanings, and they're malleable. And the more I learn, and the more I mature, the more those change. And I wouldn't say they changed. My morals and ethics have never changed. Right is right, wrong is wrong. There's no arbitrary. There's no gray when it comes to what's right and what's wrong. But looking at solutions and where we're at and where we need to be and all of those kind of things, that's definitely gray area. But anyway, this is going to be your new alternative media. It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of plays out and if it gets any kind of credibility. I mean, they're already kind of kind of compromising themselves and watering down these issues, and I don't know. I have low expectations, so if I am surprised, the reason, and of course because of the access, because of the promotion, and because of the millions of dollars behind it, that is why it's just not alternative media. If you're getting paid six figures to write a weekly piece, that is not alternative media, period. All right, so we talked about the Ukraine, and yeah, we've moved to media. Might as well just go ahead and talk about the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. This is one of those government entities. When it comes to, when the anarchists, the anarcho-capitalists, and, the Austrians and the Keynesians, they could debate whether or not we need more government regulation. We want Glass-Steagall, or if we had none, it would be better. And some people, if we had none, then it'd be awesome. And I'm yet to be convinced of that. I think that the power and the regulation has to be limited. But if you only care about profit and you only care about self-existence, you're going to have a problem. But I think we can all agree that the FCC, number one, is irrelevant in this day and age. Number two, if you've turned on the TV recently and listened to the stuff that's on there, you know that they're not doing their primary job, which is somehow controlling the sanctity and the cleanliness, the family atmosphere on television. Not that they should, but they're doing nothing to slow down and not that I would want them to, but when you these sitcoms today are just they're very risque, and they might not drop 4-letter words like we may hear from time to time on the podcast, but the content itself, did you see the same Super Bowl show I saw? Bunches of kids singing along with an entertainer talking about, their sex takes him to paradise. The sex takes him to paradise. Bruno Mars, talented guy, creepy as hell. How that gets through the FCC, I have no idea. But they're really about, they don't care about, obviously, the content of what your kids are seeing or how provocative that may be. They care about the message you're getting politically and what you're all about. So before we go down this road, we should talk about the fact that the FCC has already backed off of this plan. They have already said, whoa, too much attention. So I actually went to this proposal. The media is in a uproar because the federal government sent out this FCC media study that basically asked them about their political leanings, and I actually read the 2013 proposed FCC-sponsored study of media and newsroom practices, which I think is hilarious because if you've seen any of those bloopers from, the other, behind-the-scenes videos that have been leaked onto the internet, we already know what happens. They're just people. They're talking crap. They probably don't care a lot. Their main mission is to read the teleprompter, to get the talking points, to package up, selling products and making it seem like news. The overview of this study is, quote, Social Solutions International is pleased to present this research design to the FCC. This is a private company, by the way, that has been doing this. They were tasked with the development of a research design that can be used to identify and understand the critical information needs of the American public. Yeah, apparently people out there are being starved for real information from the TVs, the media. It's just hilarious. Apparently, you are not getting a good balance of media. And you could look at Fox News, which was one of the media corporations that was so appalled by this. Oh, it's an intrusion by the Obama administration. And they themselves have a clear-cut agenda that is so hypocritical, and really, their viewers are dumber for watching it. People that watch enough Fox News, okay, I think it's 2 hours plus a day, are some of the most uninformed people in the world. And you said, well, how can that happen, Doug? Even if it's bad information, I mean, you're getting something, right? There has to be some information. No, not really. Because if you watch Fox Business Channel, they're just selling you stocks. You watch Fox News for 10 minutes, they're just selling you pills. They have, different little skits with entrepreneurs. Ooh, what's this new app? Let's eat Taco Bell. It's not really news. It's infotainment at best. But I like how this overview and the goals here, as if you could really come to some consensus as to how to fix this problem. How about maybe holding some of these companies liable for slander? I don't know, or liable for. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, it's not illegal to lie. They can lie all they want. There's no law that says it's not. You have to tell the truth. So maybe there should be. If you're a media organization, you should have to try your best. Based on implementation of both media market census and community ecology study, that's right. It's like a little virus in a petri dish. It's you have to do a study on it. Based on the discussion and insights garnered from the 20 participants, as well as feedback from key stakeholders at FCC, Social Solutions has developed this research design. The design is based on an assumption that the period of performance for the project will be approximately 1 year. So basically, they wanted to go in to the different news organizations and collect this data. These are the 3 points. The access or potential barriers to CINs as identified by the FCC. Critical information needs. So why are you not getting your State Department talking points? Why are you not understanding what Joe Biden or Mitt Romney or whoever it may have been? Why are you not getting your dose of what you need to know what you should be thinking? It's a great question. Who's that damn editor there that keeps saying that you shouldn't hear about Pepsi Generation 1 being the number one product for 20 minutes every hour? I don't know. It would probably be the editor chief. Let's see, the media that makes up media ecologies. What media is actually included in the ecology? Ownership of that market. Got to know who to compromise with those NSA porn reports. What specific type of content dominates those media ecologies? What are they selling? You know what they're selling. Sex and fear. Duh. What is the flow of information within the ecology? Are they going to Twitter? Okay, Kim Kardashian tweeted this. Why does her stepfather look like a woman now? Is he trying to turn into Billie Jean King? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's where they get it. I could get millions of dollars, and I don't even have to do this study. The use of interaction between media that make makes media ecologies, i.e. how do different layers of ecology interact to provide the CIN, once again, the critical information needs of people, how do individuals of diverse neighborhoods, communities different in terms of access. Okay, how come the black people are not getting those messages we're giving Bill O'Reilly? How come this demographic of 18 to 35-year-old Hispanics aren't watching Neil Curvato or maybe Rachel Maddow? Why not? I don't know. There could be a few reasons why. Obviously, they're paid liars and they're not speaking the truth or giving people information that helps enable them to make better life for themselves. If you could watch the news and get informed, people would do it more. But they can't, and they're not. And the information there, though it might be great at dinner parties, probably not, but it might, that's not helping them, enable them to move up the social class or the economic class. You're not able to pull yourself out of poverty by playing Nintendo or Xbox, or watching TV, or watching PBS. It might inspire you, but it doesn't make you smarter or better, have more money. That's what matters in this world. All right, so one of the other goals here, the objectives of the study are to help the FCC answer the following questions. They've got questions. Let's see. Number one, how does the study inform the acquisition and or barriers to the critical information needs in American communities? It's because you're getting news about what's happening in Boston, or what's happening in Russia. Doesn't really necessarily pertain to you. What barriers to entry exist in the FCC-regulated markets? And to what extent do those barriers to entry have a negative impact? Okay, you didn't hear enough about your flu shots. Okay, and what happened? Oh, we had an epidemic of, the H1N1. We had an epidemic of super gonorrhea. Okay, and if we could just get these local yokel idiots on board with the message, we'd be doing much better. Maybe we need to be texting these kids. Let's see. Do the tools and templates demonstrate a high degree of internal validity? Okay, are they valid? Internal valid. Do the tools/templates demonstrate a high degree of reliability across diverse target markets? Are you selling stuff to the people there? Are they getting the message? And this is the problem, and I think that they see this, and I see this, and I think it's a great opportunity. I turn on the radio at 11 o'clock, and there's just nothing on. Some of you might be listening to internet radio. Some of you might be, watching, whatever it is that you watch on TV during the day, probably judge shows if you're watching TV during the day. If you're not on the net. But there's a huge gap. There's people that are just disserved, like myself, that are not going to watch the nightly news because I'm just not that interested. I'm just not going to give it the time that they would like to give me, because I don't have time for all the commercials. I don't have time for all of that. That's why I can't listen to a lot of internet radio anymore. Not to knock anybody out there that's trying to make a buck, but I just cannot listen to your Berkey water ad. And I have a Berkey water filter. We just bought the PF2 filters. I actually have a Pro Pure, and I wouldn't suggest it unless you don't use a lot of water. If you're maybe single, one of those jugs, it's similar to the Brita. It's a single jug. It's the new item. I bought it, and the filter's great. Having one filter, the Pro Pure filter, is great. I like it. I'm not affiliated with them at all. It takes a long time to get the water into that jug. It takes a long time. But there you go. That's all you have to say about it. Go to this website. I can't listen for 5 minutes. I don't have time. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are giving up on this. They're giving up on it because even after the commercial, the program's still selling you something. And they're not selling you things or giving you information that is helpful, useful, or empowering. And most of the time, and I know that some of the listeners of this podcast probably fall victim to this problem, It's just overly negative, and it's boring, and okay, the world's screwed. Great, yeah, I know, it's screwed. Oh, yeah, Obama sucks, and we're going to blame it on Obama. Oh, it's because the Republicans won't help Obama. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter either way. And finally here, do the tools templates demonstrate a high degree of internal validity? Do the templates demonstrate... Oh, we already went through that one. So they have this whole plan. They were going to do this, looking at the broadcast news, newspaper content, radio news, internet content, quantitative analysis and of the media providers themselves. They want to tier this whole system for the sake of brevity. It's just a matter of before you get this FCC classification. And once they have this class system, they'll say that Doug Owen and other nutters like myself that are hypercritical or not, we're not valid. Okay, so when you go to the internet and you want to, have a valid filter, what's valid? No longer is it what's the prevailing idea, the new algorithms. Once you get these different levels of organizations, then it's going to be like any other rating that you have, and then you can force other content providers, search engines, and the media itself, and the packaged national media that's bought and paid for. You can start changing, those things. So I don't think it's so much about the propaganda. It's about, obviously it's about the propaganda. Everything's propaganda, but it's because they're losing, and they're realizing that people they're not being served, which is good, because why would you want to listen to that filth 24 hours a day? I can only get, so much of my information. I can only stand so much alternative media, even though it's much more diverse. Let's see. When it comes to getting the message across, the government does have a good idea. They've been doing pretty well with Hollywood. I've talked about that over the last few podcasts. Case and point. Foreign policy, the Council on Foreign Relations, RAG, writes Ben Affleck to testify before Congress as an Africa expert. Do I have a sound effect for that, maybe? I don't know. No? Freaking soundboard's broke over here. Dang it. Anyway, I do have one. I got booze for this dude. Anyway, nothing against Ben Affleck. I think he's a pretty good actor. Do I think that he's an expert on Africa? No. Simple answer, no. Okay? Now, you know what? You could give me the internet and an atlas and, I don't know, 4 years to do nothing but read about Africa. And then I would have to visit Africa, okay? Maybe even live in Africa. Maybe know some of the political figures there. I don't know. Maybe be African or look African or not be a white Hollywood CIA actor. Oh, my goodness. Is Spreaker breaking on me? Don't reload. Be careful. Don't reload. No. Okay, there. Yeah, so the Foreign Policy mag reports, with a vicious spat of mass killings plaguing the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's how I think that they would probably speak. This is my accent that I use for Brookings or the International Crisis Group or Chatham House or any of those other think tanks that are corporate-backed shills. A Senate panel is calling on experts to appear before U.S. lawmakers next week. One of them is Hollywood actor and serial activist. He's a serial activist. He can't even help it. He's just so awesome. He's like a serial murderer, but he's a serial activist. That's a new one. The Cable has learned. Affleck is slated to appear before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee next Wednesday to discuss the troubled Central African country of 75 million people. So what's the problem here? You have to ask the question, why does anybody care? Well, the French are broke dick. They need money, and imperialism is something that they're good at. One of the last strangleholds to some of the little old pieces of paper that say that they own things from hundreds of years back, is in Africa. Now, Africa it's the pie. It's the untapped pie that the Chinese have worked diligently over the last decade to industrialize and to use as a place to export their people. Millions, I think. I don't want to say billions, but tens of millions of Chinese have now moved to Africa. That is where they're expanding. And if you look at what's happening with the old guard and the new guard, things are changing. The atmosphere, as well as the topography, the demographics are changing rapidly in Asia and in Africa as well. Asia is a big player, but Africa is where it's at. So anyway, what should I say about Ben Affleck being an expert on Africa? I don't think he is one. But it shows that everyone's interested in the Congo. Obviously, if you've listened to anything other than the mainstream media, you may know that there's a war going on for rare natural resources. If you thought what happened during the BP oil spill was horrific, was an earth-killing event, into possibly an EOL, or what is it, end-of-life event? If you watch a lot of those prepper shows, they talk about those things you have to worry about. But not to downplay the significance. I mean, horrendous. Tons of oil. I mean, millions of metric tons of oil. And pales in comparison to what's been spilled in the Congo. Pales in comparison. Okay, there's a lot of oil that came out of the Macondo BP oil well. More is spilled in the Congo. It's a freaking mess. It's a mess, and there's lots of money, and there's lots of oil. And it's where you're going to find Ben Affleck and other CIA guys. Now, this should really speak more to Congress, because Congress will do anything. They're celebrity whores. It's one of the things that really kills me. It kills me about the alternative media as well. All of you celebrity whores. I'll do anything to talk to Waylon Jennings. I'll do anything to talk to somebody that's big enough. Just if I could just get Joe Rogan on my podcast. Oh, man. Well, the Congress feel the same way as many of those people. They just shoot much higher. Much higher. They want Ben Affleck. They want Beyonce. Okay, and you can see it in their eyes. When Barack Obama is just glowing, when he's gushing over somebody like Beyonce, or when, there's so many of these examples. No point of going through them. But you can tell, when a political elite meets a celebrity elite, it's a big deal. Because when you have a political elite and a celebrity elite, you can do anything in the world. You have Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, you can overthrow the Ukraine. All you need is a couple people. Oh, George Clooney's on board. Oh, man, I'm good to go. So they figured this out. This is the disgusting thing that the FCC should be looking at. The CIA, how much money they're funding into what's happening on the ground with the media companies. Okay, that's something I'm concerned about. How much of the media am I getting is military sponsored? How much of it is being purchased by my own tax dollars? Okay, that's something that the FCC should look into. Not why is the Pentagon message not reaching the people? There's a lot of other stories I didn't get to talk to. Some of these that kind of highlight the uncertainty of what's happening in the world, and that shows you just the double crossing aspect of it. Here's one, and I think it's important. Came from Richard Silverstein. Mossad plants disinformation about sanctions busting arms dealer. Now, if you didn't hear about this, guess who's selling arms to the Iranians that are then shipping them through Hezbollah, to Palestine, to Syria, to all of the other places? Well, take a wild guess. Where do you think all of those weapons are coming from? Blackwater? Good guess. Absolutely. is happening. But most people would not think that it's the Israelis and Mossad. Now, when this came out this week, people got really upset. Oh, my God, are you telling me that the Israelis, the IDF, and other rogue agents, wink, wink, other lords of war, are selling the Iranians weapons? This is what happens when a good thing gets busted. So anyway, the Telegraph reported that Weinstein, this guy who's an arms dealer, was sending them to Iran. The story mentioned his reporting, Silverstein, and it got a lot of exposure. Let me get right to it. The arms dealer, Avakai Weinstein, has been caught red-handed by the Department of Homeland Security and Greek security officials trying to ship spare parts for F-4 fighter jets to Iran. My post yesterday noted that Weinstein had been caught in such banned transactions at least 3 times prior to 2004. And in the latest, this one makes it 4. He also noted that he had never been charged for any crime and let alone convicted or jailed. In contrast, the U.S. co-sponsor, co-conspirator, we know about from one of the previous failed attempts, Lieb Cohen, was charged by the FBI and went to prison. And at the time, Richard here argued that this was prima facie proof of an ongoing relationship between Weinstein and the Mossad. But another argument further supports this view. Channel 10's military reporter told his audience in Hebrew that in this transaction, the arms dealer was actually doing a service for his country, since the spare parts he was attempting to send to Iran were deliberately flawed. That's right, we're sending them bad parts. We're going to get the bad guys. And this is always what they say. Oh, well, we just gave the drug dealers, the Sinaloa cartel, the weapons to kill the other drug dealers because, they're all bad. We just had them doing our dirty work, and we were gaming this whole thing. And unfortunately, 30 or 40,000 people died, but we were in control of it. Then you realize, who's the bad guy anymore? Who's the one that is the drug dealer, and who's the one that's the good guy? It's hard to tell. Really? Really hard to tell. One of them has a badge and says he's a government official and is paid for by tax money, who is state-sponsored. I think that's usually the bad guy, because they are, if it's the government that's running the drugs, I don't care. It's not okay for you to run drugs just because you're doing something. I could say, well, I'm doing an investigation into heroin users here in Austin, and that's why I'm selling the heroin. That's a great excuse for why you would be doing that. But if I tried to pull that out of my hat, the reason I was speeding is because I'm doing research on speeding. Good luck with that line of logic, but it's an easy escape. And, deny, more plausible deniability. All right, so the FCC, the media, I did want to talk about George Soros. We did talk about his big bet, but, he's in the news again because of his involvement in this FCC row. Let me see. I had that in front of me. Oh, well, I don't know. I guess we can talk about that next week. I did want to just wrap it up with this. And this is the kind of fake solutions, fake patriotism that we get. And this is what the media has really brought you as a solution. And this also just shows you how, I think, dense some of these politicians are and how stupid they think Americans are. Okay, so RT had this one. American military banned from purchasing flags in China. People are like, man, that dang old American flag made in China, that's a perfect example of what's happened to this country. It's true, people. It's not just that redneck guy on the front porch drinking Schlitz that's right. Okay, it's true. We have all of these symbols of what makes us great, but they're hollow. They're hollow. And they are meaningless, just like this legislation. Okay, this doesn't do anything to address real economic solutions. And I just threw one out there, and maybe you think it's relative or relevant. A great start would actually be launching an investigation into the trillions of dollars that's missing in cash from the Pentagon. Okay, Don Rumsfeld, and we got a link here in the article to him talking about the missing trillions of dollars of cash, and that number is old. That's back 2010 or 2000 September 10th, 2001. When the day before 9/11, when we learned that the government can't find any of the money. I mean, this is not an economic solution. How about going after criminals in the government? How about going after those laws or targeting laws that make it so that Fortune 500 companies actually pay taxes? I don't know. I mean, but see, it feels good. That's the whole point. It's not about really doing anything. And this is why Congress and I think our republic and the representative government that we have today is making itself irrelevant. And that's why people are calling for a new world order. That's why they want to give Obama or whoever it is the powers that they need to change the world, because people are tired of these kind of lip service, boot-licking politicians. Anyway, I mean, the new policy passed as part of a $1.1 trillion omnibus appropriations bill, which is funded through the government. So this is just one of the many things that they threw in there, so that I'll give him his credit. Representative Mike Thompson, who's a Democrat, who's running for his 9th term, has brought this. He said, quote, "I thought it was appalling our Department of Defense would have flags made in other countries." He said, quote, "but it's also important because we need to be making more in America." I agree with the sentiment, but, well, I don't have a lot more to say about that. Thank you so much for being part of the show today, and we will be doing the Doomcast, I think, probably Sunday night. It just depends. I'm going to get some sleep. I hope you have a great weekend if you're in the area here. It's very pretty. And if you're freezing along the East Coast, my heart goes out to you, all of the rest of you around the world. Thank you so much for being part of Blacklisted Radio. I'll be back next week for another live edition. Until then, take care.